2.8 wasn't as bad as many others made it seem. I enjoyed it, but it did feel like it didn't quite keep the quality and storytelling compared to the 2.7 finale, which in my opinion isn't a totally fair comparison, as 2.7 is a culmination of everything and is the literal highest moment of the entire arc of Renacida. I'd say it's sort of like a combination of the filler stories of 1.2's Moon Lodge and 2.1's Riccioli, with the importance of 1.3's Black Shore story and overarching setup of things like in 1.4 Somnoire. This definitely is more than just filler, and I want to give my case on this. I'll talk about why Honami is important to Wuthering Waves through expansion and the Lament activities, and how this patch's story is an evolution on filler arcs, which I think is sort of the wrong label. I think people saying this is 100% filler are not fully understanding things, are saying it to get clicks and cause drama, or because there's a hyper focus on the anime romance homages. But before I hit on those things, I want to mention what gets the blood boiling. The problems. As I said in the beginning, things felt like they started to peter out, and I felt this at around the Neon Tower mark, which I'd say is a little over half into the story. It felt that way to me because of the main issue of this not fully utilizing the overall idea of this lament being looped. We really only experience it twice throughout the story, in the beginning on the first arrival, and in the Neon Tower when we're going after the false sovereign. We are largely told of it through Chisa's experience as well as through Sumika's documented findings in her Amber. For a sonoro sphere with such a dire thing, it was shown to us about as well as the average male's ability to express themselves. My expectation was that by the time we headed to the tower, we would have experienced the looping process. The idea of it ended up being more so a stage piece rather than an actual threat we feel while in this unique sonoro. It also wasn't used well in a gameplay way either, making this sonoro feel as threatening as it should during the story. Things felt rushed from this point, and I think that's why they used Sumika as the key for this idea. I feel like Sumika was their answer to them maybe not having enough time to put proper effort into this idea as of now. So to not make this a long drawn out repetitive quest people would most likely not jive with, they opted for us to have a more passive-ish experience of the loop, and have Sumika be the reason we don't struggle our way up to the tower. It's not to say I didn't like Sumika either, but to me I definitely felt like she had potential for something a bit more, and in the end she didn't meet that potential. Maybe that was the case though because of the circumstances, but I don't know. My hope is that if we find more of Honami, which I hope to God we do, we can maybe see her again, or generally find out more about her in the Black Shores later on. But it also felt rushed towards the climax as well, and I'm gonna be 100% with y'all, I'm still not entirely sure how we even fixed the loop. There was no context on the Sovereign being there or what its relationship to the loop was. There is only one explanation as to why it was a false sovereign, and that was at the beginning of the quest where Valentina explained how they found this sonoro, through Leviathan's essence. This implies then that its frequencies found their way elsewhere, but as she said, wasn't an immediate risk of reviving Leviathan. That explains how they found it to begin with and why we couldn't up until now. But outside of that one tiny ass thing, as far as I can tell, it literally was never built up or even told to us as to why this was happening and why killing False Sovereign fixed the loop. Like, was that solely the reason it was looping? It mentioned a cocoon and that they were building it for a while. So does this then mean that Leviathan's influence has haunted other civilizations like Honami as well? Or was this solely in this sonorosphere separate from the real Honami? It just felt sudden and out of place, and there were parts leading up to it where it felt like I missed or accidentally skipped a part.
Hey! It's as far as I go.
Unless there's more, it just didn't feel right at all to me, and things needed to end soon, and so we just fought some boss enemy and then saved the day. The Sovereign is specifically meant to have it serve as unification for Leviathan, and so I have to create a potential theory on this. The potential answer, ironing out why it was here at all and why killing it solved the problem, was maybe because the Fraxidus used part of its essence to create a looping sonoro as a means for experimenting further with controlling wave-worn effects and the Lament by having it being contained, tested, and pulled out of the sonoro. This loop serves as essentially infinite food for it to build up its cocoon, which is nourished through the form of irid glow, acting as a kind of devouring reset to the area. I think of it similar to the Dark Tide in Renacida and how it corrupts and traps people caught in its wake, being used as sustenance for the journeying paradise. Through each reset though, the Fraxidus could be pulling data, like how rovers' frequencies were pulled as a way to monitor information regarding the use of a potentially fully realized artificial wave-worn effect. I think this is why we see the false sovereign, how this happened, and why killing it set things free. With all that speculative theory stuff in mind though, I shouldn't need to create this totally unconfirmed kind of scenario to understand how we fixed a problem we didn't even fully know the source of. This seems like the closest or most reasonable explanation, but am I alone in this? Like, okay, pacing is a little out of whack, alright, whatever. But the semi-incompleteness of the Fraxidus, out-of-nowhere appearance of the false sovereign, and lack of a focused explanation on the conflict of the story made this ending feel unsatisfying. But maybe I'm just being impatient on some of those things, and they'll be paid off later on. Moving away from the problems though, let's start with Honami and how it expanded the world prospect exponentially and brought up interesting Lament-related things. We're all aware that sonorospheres exist as these separate spaces composed of remnant energy. They range from smaller domains that we're used to for typical things in stories and events, but we also know that they can house huge areas like the Weiqi Sonoro, Guishu Port before the Lament, or Philova's construction of the Beyond. This is important to point out because the Black Shores as a region is relatively bare, scattered by digital mountains, so the idea of utilizing sonoros as a way to add more areas while also not totally adding them is cool. This may be how they plan on building out the Black Shores as a destination on our map. And with places like Honami being detected due to Leviathan's essence, they're not coming totally out of nowhere. After all, the Black Shores is the place that monitors Lament activity. They mention how this area of Honami is only one area, so we could in theory get different provinces of Honami at a later date. I can see this happening if we ever visit Neo Honami, the current residing city where this old one used to be and Chisa's hometown. Outside of how this may be a hub, it also expanded on Lament activity and wave-worn effects as well. The biggest thing being the irid glow being confined in a sonoro as a unique wave-worn phenomena, which I assumed could only be seen in the real-world regions. This makes me wonder if this sonoro is an evolution on the Court of Cervantes' findings you may have forgotten about all the way back in 1.0. Remember, the Court as benefactors of the Fraxidus were trying to recreate wave-worn effects in Retroact Rain. So the irid glow may be fruits or further steps of those early experiments. If I'm not mistaken, there have been no other sonorospheres which have had unique wave-worns. There seems to be something bigger in Honami and the original area of Ashinohara, as indicated by the collective voices of the False Sovereign and Fraxidus experiments, which seemingly have been going on for some time. Maybe whatever has happened in the time Chisa has been stuck in Honami will be told to us once we met her mother in Star Torch. After all, it's been 20 years. The main thing though is that the Black Shores may evolve into a Sonoro hub, and that means Solaris 3 isn't limited to just the current existing nations. I'd wager this is how we may get Cyberpunk's collab as well. It also adds mystery and expands a bit on the greater sinister plans the Fraxidus are cooking up with their Sonoro control experiments, the looping of the Lament, and the analysis of Lament energy. One of the immediate things that this patch did a good job at was making a filler story beat not feel that way, and is in my view an evolution of filler. Based on this quest, if this is how they're planning to deal with downshifting from big moments in the story, I'm totally fine with this. 1.2's Moon Lodge and 2.1's Fishing Extravaganza weren't bad by any means, and personally I enjoyed 1.2 way more than 2.1's story. But their stories are definite side-questing things, and are sort of non-essential pieces of knowledge for pertinent story moments. At most, it adds more investment with the characters, deepening emotional impact. In the past, for 1.2, I've given praise on it because it offered up nice perspectives on the more personal side of things. It was a micro-scale focused story that encapsulated the ideas of compassion and remembering the smaller issues that are more intimate within the world. It had some bigger overarching ideas like the past our theory for understanding story elements like how tacit fields form and what the scientists do to understand and combat these waveborne effects. But generally, it was a smaller comparative problem to a Threnodian. 1.2's focused zoom-in allowed us to get to know the civilization more personally. 2.8 did this in a similar way where it zoomed into a specific portion of Honami, and we get screenshots of their daily lives and Chisa as the anchoring reason for why we see this. Much like how Sheng Liao or Zhe were the anchors to having us better understand things in Huanglong culturally, Chisa is a similar functioning character for Honami. But unlike Zhe and Sheng Liao, she's a direct tie into Laharoi and the next major story. This is because she's a former student of Star Torch in Laharoi, and her mother is seemingly residing there as a professor, which we heard on the radio message in the Segue story. Not only that, but Chisa is also a potential Black Shores operative considering Rover wanted her in. While she declined for now, I don't doubt that the offer is indefinitely on the table for if or when she feels ready. 2.8 combines the closeness of the filler stories of 1.2 and 2.1 in the world-building aspects of them, while also having it be a pertinent thing to know about because of its ties to the upcoming dive into Laharoi and Star Torch Academy. This story also brought up important things regarding Sonorosphere's Lament waveborne effects in Irid Glow and the Fraxidus as well, and it implies bigger things and methods in how the Fraxidus may use this as tools for their aims. Considering those things too, that's why I think this is also similar to 1.4's Somnoire Excursion. Somnoire's role has continued to play an ever-present kind of role in the background, but became more clear and prominent for people after finding out that Cristoforo used it to get Scar out of prison. With how Honami's Sonoro played out, we absolutely will be seeing this idea at a later date, and I have expectations of this idea coming back when we're deeper into the Laharoi conflict. Now, is 2.8 filler? That's the question or statement that I've seen since its launch, and to say it's filler is to frame this wrong because it's more so a bridge, or it's the warm-up before the workout. It has purpose, but sometimes depending on your warm-up, it'll feel like this extra step is getting in your way. In reality, much like a warm-up, it's setting you up for success and preparing you for the bigger thing to come. Like, if you were to remove this part, you not only lack context for stuff, but you would also be ass-rushed with a cold enema as you are suddenly in Laharoi trying to cheat off of Linnea's test. It'd be a whiplash kind of thing, and you don't want to be in Fletcher's band class. Overall, while this isn't my favorite of the quests, as Chisa wasn't someone I personally was ovulating for, plus having some storytelling issues, I'm finding that many people seem to be hella over-hating this quest, and downplaying it too unfairly. I'm also just happy that things ended nicely with the party, seeing the Black Shore members interact, and hearing Alto and Brant tag team scalpers like the maggots they are. All the while spitting on that thing with cryptic messages of the universe abandoning us and hyping us all up for the Arctic void storms of Laharoi. But what are your thoughts on 2.8? Did you agree with the problems that I had or connect some of the theory stuff that I brought up? Of course, thank you for letting me take your time, like and sub, and be safe out there.